Hello everyone, this is Ben from VGBlaster and today I am back doing another deck profile. Don't know why I always start with my card face down. You know what this deck profile is, you clicked the video for a reason, you saw the picture, you saw the name. This is my Kagero Dragonic Blademaster deck profile. This is slightly different to what most people will run, which I'll go through as I get into the deck. This is the deck I took to UK Nationals about a month ago. It was a 2-day tournament. Day 1 was 7 rounds. You had to win 5 to qualify for day 2, which I did. I then went out that night and got extremely drunk, and if I wanted to make it to day 2 I had to get up at like 6 AM to get a 2-hour bus, which is not ideal when you're hungover, so I didn't actually go to day 2 unfortunately. I wasn't overly fussed because obviously if you watch a previous video I've already qualified for Buddy Fight Worlds. I wasn't 100%. I think this deck stood a good chance, honestly, from what was there. But yeah, I kind of felt it sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm not trying not to. Kind of feels like I was stealing like people's chances from going to Japan when I was already going, because even if I won or came quite top, my place would get passed down. So I wasn't overly fussed about not making it to day 2. But anyway, moving on from that, this deck did pretty well. I only kind of lost to bad luck. Either I think one game was like a really bad hand, like I couldn't hit grade 3. Well, that I don't think it's that. It was grade 2. I was struggling to hit for some reason, and I won most of them in this build. And then another game I just got crit sacked by blasters. So you know that's the game. But I'll get onto the deck profile then, shall I? As you can see, my starter is Sagef, not Conroe. So a lot of people might have clicked off this video already, thinking this guy's a fucking idiot. Why is he not running Conroe? Yes, this can upset consistency. It can. Because Conroe, obviously, you search out for your lava flow, make sure you get your Kouen in hand, searches out perfect guards, anything like that. But I found, especially when I was playing people at Nationals, these smart players will field their field as much as possible. They'll call a field out, because you can retire quite well in this deck, but in other builds I've seen, you can't retire as consistently for as low a cost. So people fill the field, which means you're not getting your GB2 from Kouen, you're having to drop cards for Ziegenberg, you're forced to use Ziegenberg's flip ability, which ideally you don't want to do. You just want to be using his secondary stand effect, so then you can use it multiple times if need be. You only really want to flip Ziegenberg up if you've G-guarded and you want to hit GB3 on first stride. Or if you're really desperate and you think you can kill your opponent that turn. So yeah, that's how I run Sagef. It's also the reason why I run 2 Sagefs. Someone called me a monster at Nationals for doing this, which I found quite amusing, honestly, in good humour obviously. But yeah, so Sagef's ability is when something's retired, shove it into the soul, your opponent chooses another rearguard and retires it. I've had situations where I've chucked 2 of these down, and then on my opponent's turn, they're now griffined, put both of them into the soul, they've lost 3 rearguards on their turn. Absolutely devastating to them. They don't want that to happen. So when they see Sagef, it can upset people. And it can ruin plays, make more defensive, gets rid of your opponent's field, make sure you're getting your abilities off that you want to get off. So for that reason, yeah, 2 Sagef. So for grade 3s, we will run 4 copies of Kouen. So Kouen is your ideal ride, he's the only thing you want to ride into, he has the blaze ability. Count +1 when you stride, choose one of your opponent's rearguards, retire it, choose one of your units with the blaze ability, give it +3, and the second effect of GB2 at the end of each turn, that's yours and your opponent's. So this deck is very hand trappy, as you can see, like I mentioned with the Sagefs and some other stuff that I'll show you later. So you can quite easily clear a board on your opponent's turn if you're against ground blue and they decide to hollow their whole field, or you killed the units that aren't hollowed with effects and then they have to get rid of the rest of the field. Then you get the GB2 skill, anything like that. Choose a grade 3 with the blaze ability from your drop zone and add it to hand. This is even stronger now. Ultimate strides are coming out, especially with Dragon Empire's Xerath Dragon being pretty strong. So you can pretty much make sure if at the end of your turn you can add a Kouen back from the drop zone to hand to make sure you can ultimate stride next turn, or as I said in the situation, you blow up your opponent's field on their turn, add it back to hand and then instantly drop it for ultimate stride as long as the conditions are met and you feel like that's going to finish your opponent, because don't go ham on the ultimate stride, because if your opponent survives it, you're in a lot of trouble. So our other grade 3 is Jago, 3 copies of. You really don't want to be riding him. If you can kind of fix it, because his first effect is when he's placed on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, Cat boss 1, Soul boss 1, and kill a card in the same column as this unit. So if you ride it and you still have the starter out, then you're going to kill that. So it's similar to your on-stride effect, you're still getting one retire, but then ideally you want to ride into Kouen, then Soul Blast the Jargo out of there, and then add it back to hand with Kowen's skill. So it can be fixed if you ride it. That's why I'm not too upset about not having Conroe, because you draw into your deck quite a bit, and obviously you're quad driving pretty regularly with Ziegenberg, stuff like that. So it can be fixed. So it's not a disaster if you have to ride Jargo, but you can fix it if you do. For grade 2s, we run Iron 4 copies of Nadim, because your counter blast is very important in this deck. Your opponent should know your counter blast is very important in this deck. It makes things more powerful, it makes sure you're retiring cards, anything like that. For Ziegenberg needs his counter blast, you're on stride, so you're using 2 counter blasts every turn quite consistently, and then like additional ones for rear guards. So you need to build a good counter charge engine. Just Nadim alone is not good enough, and even if you don't particularly need the counter blast, your opponent will overguard this card because they don't want you to have it. So yeah, Nadim's very good. His skill is, he has the blaze ability. When the unit attacks a Vanguard, if your Vanguard's blazing, he gets plus 2k. That can even be done at when you're still at grade 2, so as long as your Vanguard's blazing, he's an 11k attacker. And then the second effect of GB1, once unit attack hits a Vanguard, counter charge 1. So like I said, your opponent won't want that to happen, they'll guard it, and then you can kill it with other stuff. Kill them with other stuff, obviously. Next for grade 2s, we run Mabuti, or Mabudi. He also has the blaze ability, Generation Break 2. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, if you have a blazing Vanguard with Blademaster in its card name, this unit draw a card, and this unit gets plus 2000 power for each one of your opponent's open rearguard circles. So more often than not, this is going to be a 19k attacker. Bit of an awkward number, but usually you're boosting it, or you put some triggers on it or something. Or you'll give it the plus 3000 power if it's already on the field when you stride from Kouen to make it 22. Mabuti is very strong. Your Vanguard, usually, as I said, you're always going to stride into Ziegenberg as much as possible. So your opponent's having to deal with 2 big Vanguard attacks, and then you're obviously getting 4 drive checks. So you want to make sure your rear guards are as pumped up as possible as well. So if they have to guard 2 Vanguard attacks and then deal with 2 strong rear guard attacks, they're going to have a bad time. They've got no field. They're going to waste the hand. They're going to have not much to do on their turn, usually. So yeah, Mabuti's really good for putting extra pressure on. In the same vein, we run 2 copies of Radiant Dragon. On placement, count +1, soul +1. If you have a Vanguard with Blademaster's card name, pay the cost, choose one of your opponent's grade 1 or less rear guards and retire it. This unit gets plus 2k, and then a continuous effect of this unit gets plus 2000 power for every one of your opponent's empty rear guard circles. So that's continuous, that happens. So if your opponent has like 1 card in the field and then using another ability to get rid of it, then it'll gain the power. Mabuti doesn't do that, but Mabuti's on attack, so usually you've blown up the field by then anyway. Him being a continuous skill just helps make sure you get the full effect. So he hopefully would be 21k power, which is a much better number, just by himself, and then he can chuck power on other stuff. Say you have him and a Nadim out, you can chuck all your triggers on Nadim, because Radiant Dragon's already swinging pretty big by himself anyway. As I said, bigger attacks is better in this deck. And finally, my controversial grade 2 choice. A lot of people run Neoflame. I don't like Neoflame. I don't know why. It never works for me when I want it to work, because it's only on the turn it's placed, and you've got to put it in the right column. I don't know. I don't like Neoflame, and it's a counterblast. I'm liking Rulon a lot. If you don't know what Rulon does, most people don't. Most of the time when I put it on the field, everyone's like, whoa, what the hell's that? He's GB1, once unit intercepts, your Vanguard gains the ability of, if during this attack, if that attack did not hit, choose one of your opponent's rested rear guards and retire it. So your opponent will read that and go, oh shit, I gotta get rid of that, and they'll swing at it, and you're like, alright then. His skill isn't overly important, he's there to kind of be a target, to kind of draw attention away from your Vanguard, and then if they don't, then you're going to intercept and get a retire off. So that's kind of why he's there. Only at 2, because like I said, you want to have kind of powerhouse rear guards. Obviously, Jargo, I forgot to mention Jargo's second effect, but obviously he's 17k on your turn, as long as your opponent has an empty back row, so you're adding him back to hand, and he's ideally usually a rear guard as well. So your other rear guards are pretty powerful. He's just there as kind of like a threat to your opponent. And then once again, if they don't get rid of it, use his effect, intercept with him, stop a weak attack, and then kill something. But basically free. If you want to stop that attack anyway, you're going to replace ruling with a stronger rearguard, and then you've got to retire off. Your skills are much easier to then do. You can chuck a Sagef in if you've got one out, retire something else. You can just make some good plays with it, or as I said, it's just there for you to divert attention from your Vanguard. Grade 1s. 4 copies of Protect Orb Dragon. The counter charge is very important in this deck, as I said. I don't like Dimjid. I mean, I've seen, if you want to run Dimjid, I'd suggest putting Bernadette in, the card that, like, when you're blazing, if it boosts and hits, you can search top 5 for a blaze card, because that's obviously a blaze perfect guard. But I don't know, I like the counter charge better. Dimjid's kind of, I don't know, situational. I find I usually need the counter boss more than I need like a 26k shield, and even then I'd rather use it as a perfect guard anyway, most likely, because you have a quite decent sized hand in this deck. I don't think you need that extra Dimjid. You're either gonna, if you can control the flow of the game by retiring and keeping your hand big, you don't need it. You need the counter boss more just to consistently make sure you are keeping your resources open, to making sure you're retiring, getting big power plays off, stuff like that. So for that reason, I would Protect Orb. 4 copies of Nadim is essential. When your Vanguard is blazing, as long as it's got Dragonic Blademaster in its card name, if you've retired a card that turn, or I think it has to be on the field, and then you retire something, then when your Vanguard becomes blazing, counter charge 1, this unit gets plus 4k, so it's an 11k booster, or you can do what I do and usually put, you know, if you're short your grade 2s or your Jargo, you put 2 in a column, it's a 22k column by itself for 2 grade 1s, which is pretty crazy, and you get 2 counter charge, which means your turn's basically free in terms of what you paid for skills. So Nadim is absolutely amazing. He's usually the only grade 1 you want on the field, just because our other grade 1 is Lizard Soldier Belog. Belog is the same effect as Ruling, only when he's placed on Guardian Circle from anywhere. I think the only way you can do that is guard from hand usually, or if for some reason you run a Quintet Wall. Don't run a Quintet Wall. Yeah, Belog, when he's placed, GB1 when he's placed on Guardian Circle, same effect. If that attack does not hit, choose a rearguard at rest, retire it. The rearguard at rest keeps it fair. Don't whinge about it. But it doesn't kind of matter what you kill really. You're going to be wiping most things out. And if you can kill more on your opponent's turn, you can board wipe them, or kill them on their turn. It stops things like restands. It will anything like that, like from stand triggers. And then it's easier to wipe the rest out on your turn. You don't have to pay as much cost. You don't have to use Ziegenberg's first skill, anything like that. It's just easier to then finish the rest of the cards off on your turn. So yeah, and finally for grade 1s, we run 3 copies of Lava Flow Dragon. Obviously, striding isn't that much of an issue in this deck because you consistently, you know, if you're playing the deck right, you're playing smart, you're killing things when they should be killed, you're adding grade 3s back to hand for stride. But then sometimes you want to call that Jargo to the field, so if you have a Lava Flow in hand, you can confidently call that Jargo, stride, and then you're going to add another grade 3 back at the end of that turn anyway for next turn. Or obviously, if you have Jargo in hand, you ideally want to be riding Kouen, use him for his skill to search out the Kouen. So he's just there for little situations like that, just to keep the deck running consistently, getting into what you want to get into, and striding when you want to stride. So moving on to triggers, we will be running 8 crit. I couldn't find them. Ideally, this one should be the really old trigger. I know they're hard to get hold of now. It's like the Snake Man. It's like the Margol effect of put it into the soul, give something +3. You don't need it always, but this deck uses quite a bit of soul. So sometimes it is quite important to the deck, you know, if you want to get certain skills off. So ideally run that, but I like the Art of Muscle Flash anyway. And your other perfect guard can go into the soul. Here's your Heartfront Clone obviously. When your Vanguard attacks, put it into soul, 5k draw a card. So yeah, I run 4 draw. I've seen people run the stand triggers. That's absolutely fine, I get why they do that. Obviously, as I said, your rear guards are pretty pumped. But I don't like, if you watch my Vanquish video as well, I get why people run stands. If you hit them, fantastic. You're getting more attacks off that are quite big. But you put all your focus on it, and then you swing with a rear guard, and then you attack your Vanguard, you don't hit that stand trigger, you hit a good few triggers, you put them on, The one rear guard, they block that easily. You could have split those triggers and finished your opponent, but you couldn't because you've got a rested rear guard. I find, especially if you're getting quad drive or anything like that, or your Vanguard's going to be parent your rear guards more, just swing your Vanguard first. It usually baits anything like a perfect guard as well. They don't want to take the big attack first. They will, you know, if they have 4 damage, they'll take a huge rear guard attack, hope for a trigger, then their turn's easier if they hit it to guard. So yeah, I prefer swinging them with the Vanguard because your opponent's either going to drop that perfect guard early, or they're going to risk it and you crit them for game, anything like that. So I don't run stands for that reason, and I also like the draw trigger effect of there's a lot of annoying starting Vanguards in the game right now. This makes sure you can kill them pretty early, get rid of that Wingle early, get rid of anything like that you just don't want to deal with. And finally, for heals. I use Positive Draco Kid, you can use any heal you want. I do run Advanced Guard Dragon in this deck, obviously, so I can get the count charge when I drop it for that. So that's why he's useful. So just my trigger out. Moving on to strides. 2 copies of Divine Dragonite Mustafar. Count +1, flip a copy face up, kill a rear guard, then give a unit the effect of, for every face up copy of himself in the G zone, choose a unit. If that unit hits, count charge 1. So obviously he's usually the first stride. You know, usually your opponent has 2 rear guards on the field, you'll stride, kill 1, count +1, flip it face up, flip the second copy face up, choose your Vanguard. Then once again, your opponent knows your counter blast is very important. Although at this stage in the game, it's like, you're probably gonna take one next turn anyway. You've killed 2 units, you're building up advantage. So they'll either drop guard early, and then it's easier to do loads of damage next turn with Ziegenberg, or they'll let it hit and you get your counter charge, and then their damage is building up. Yeah, they'll have a bit more cards in hand for next turn, or to make bigger plays or to guard, but it creates a choice for your opponent, and it keeps you in control of the game. So yeah, that's why I like Mustafar. He's usually first stride. In certain situations where he's not ideal, I have Vortex Dragon. So say you only have, you know, you've for some reason used your counter blast, you've used Gatling Claw, and then your opponent's kind of thought smartly about what they want to do. They've attacked some rear guards, they've not given you any more damage to do any more effects. You can do it. Or if your opponent has like 0 rear guards and you don't want to risk counter blasting and then not getting it back, because you want to be hitting GB2 on your first stride. You have to hit GB2. Kowen's skill is GB2. Mabudi is GB2 if you want to use him on the first turn you stride. So yeah, and then obviously Ziegenberg, if you hit GB2 you can stride into him, you don't have to use his first effect because you're at GB3. So your first stride wants to hit your GB2, so his effect is when he attacks, flip a card face up. If that attack hits, retire a rear guard for every Flame Dragon on your Vanguard. You're guaranteed 1 kill because he's a Flame Dragon, and then as long as you're on Kouen, you're going to retire something else. For some reason, Jargo is a winged dragon, so keep that in mind. If you stride on Jargo, you're only going to get 1 retire. But, once again, the most important thing is hitting that GB2. So that's why I run that. Next, the main MVP of the deck, Flare Arms, Ziegenberg. +1, flip a copy of himself face up, choose a rear guard, retire it. Once again, you don't want to be using that unless it's absolutely essential. It's a second effect of count +1. At the end of the turn, this unit attacked in general, sorry. If it is blazing, also it has the blaze ability as well. Drop a card for every one of your opponent's rear guards. Stand this card, drive -2. Usually, you are not dropping any cards for this effect. That is ideal. You can't blast 1, restand your Vanguard for another attack with 1 drive check. So technically it's a quad drive, but it's better than a quad drive because you're getting 2 big attacks. And ideally you're not having to drop anything to do it. It's 1 counter blast. It's such a good card, puts so much pressure on your opponent. You usually need 1 or 2 to finish your opponent, but you can go into multiple if you're not using its first effect. As I said, that's the ideal situation. But yeah, Ziegenberg is just incredibly strong. Next, I still run 2 copies of Express. It's very situational, but as I said, you're mostly striding into Ziegenberg anyway. So if they're in that situation where you know they've got multiple perfect guards in their hands, they've used Ezra's skill, so you know, or they've hit 2 on a drive check or something like that, and they're at 5 damage, this can go in and just be like, right, you're not healing, you're not dropping those perfect guards against my Vanguard, I'm going to, you know, put a which I'm going to put in a Nadim behind my Vanguard, swinging for like 30 something K. It can finish your opponent, or if they're a very low hand and you don't want to risk them hitting heals or anything like that, you just want a guaranteed death. Final Express is good. I also like Nouveau Varg. That was one of my favourite decks from back in the day when it was top meta. I loved that deck. So that's my personal reason. I understand if you don't want to run it. I've seen a lot of people run Root Flare, and I assume that's because they don't want to deal with resist, or for some reason if they don't have a field or anything like that, you can't hit Blaze. It helps. But I find Root Flare would be a dead turn. Root Flare is an easy turn for your opponent. And if your opponent has like multiple resist, it's only going to kill one of them usually. If they're smart, they'll call like 2 resist in a column, or they'll just call that resist if it's a grade 2 or 3 or something. They'll call that resist to the front row, nothing to the back row, so you can't use Root Flare anyway. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like Root Flare. I'd rather like if they've got a resist, you need to just accept it and accept you're gonna have to play around that fact. So yeah, that's why I kind of prefer Express. Personal opinion. If you like I said, if you want to run a Root Flare, that is absolutely fine. Next, one copy of the GB8, Blazing Burst Dragon. GB8 when it attacks, kill your opponent's rearguards. All your rearguards get 10k power. If you killed 3 or more from his effect, this unit gets plus 10k and 1 crit. Not great as a GB8. It's kind of like the mid-level ones. It's not really up there because it's very situational if they have like a board to kill to gain its full effect. It's just kind of there if it can, once again, it can board wipe if your field's locked by Link Joker or anything like that, stunned, all that shiz. But then if you've gone for all your Ziegenbergs, somehow you've been forced to flip them, you don't want to deal with it. I think it is a general retire all, so that gets over resist. You're in a pretty dire situation if you have to go into a GB8 to get rid of your resist. But yeah, he can be good. Your opponent's a low hand, you've gone for your Ziegenbergs, he will finish the game for you usually. He'll power up your already powered up rearguards, and yeah. Next, we still run Seabreeze. I explained this in my Vanguard video. Seabreeze is still very much important. People play the grade 2 game, especially when Xerath Dragons are going to become more and more prevalent. Everyone wants to put in that GB3 first and just rushing out your opponent. So I think there's going to be some nasty builds built around it. So Seabreeze makes sure you're getting your advantage and you still once again controlling the flow of the game. If your opponent knows you're running Seabreeze, they might not rush it, they might go into grade 3, they'll think about how they want to play it. Yeah, I still find Seabreeze, I really miss it when it's not in the deck. So moving on to G-Guards, we run 1 copy of Advanced Guard Dragon, so +1, flip the card face up, choose a rested, is it back row? It's back row and grade 1 or less. The cost, if you do, choose one of your opponent's grade 1 or less rear guards and retire it. Right, so it's grade 1 or less specifically. For some reason I thought it was just back row. But yeah, so when it's placed, choose a rested grade 1 or less, kill it. Then obviously if you have Sigef, put it in the soul, kill something else. Intercept or drop Belog, intercept the Rulin, drop Belog from hand, kill something else, because usually that's going to make 31, which is usually a pretty good number. It's going to kill 2 units. Once again, I said this build is pretty hand trappy, I suppose, or it's more focused on killing your opponent's rearguards on their turn as well as your own, for very little cost. So yeah, I like Advanced Guard for stuff like that. Next, 1 copy of Acial Orb Dragon. If your opponent doesn't have a full field, he's a 31k shield. For the same reason I run Vitra still in Vanquisher, if you're forced to let your opponent stride first, and they hit a few triggers, usually they'll have a final rearguard attack for 26, 28 kind of numbers. So I find, and they're probably not going to call a full field on that first turn, but yeah, I find Abyssal just once again helps you guard as a first G-Guard, and then you're probably going to be using Advanced Guard, so flip it anyway because you need a dead G-Guard. So I don't see why not. Next, 1 copy of Abed Salim. When he's placed, Cat +1, he gains 10k shield for every open rearguard circle in your opponent's field. Really good against Shadow Paladins, considering they're everywhere in the meta right now. Really good against a lot of stuff, for just hitting high shield numbers. Against stuff that hits ridiculously big, like Chronojet, G and stuff like that. Just, especially in this build where you're retiring quite a bit on your opponent's turn, So you can, you know, you can use Rulin or Belog before they swing with the Vanguard. Drop this. You know, its shield's going to be even bigger. So yeah. Once again, this and the next I'm going to go into. These Counter Blast. This is why your Counter Charge engine is definitely really important as well. So finally, 2 copies of, what's it called? Denaugrafen. I forgot his name for a second then. Denaugrafen is obviously a staple card in any kind of Kagero build. When you place a Guardian Circle, count +1, retire the attacking rear guard. So it's an instant no thank you to most stuff. There is kind of ways around it now. Obviously Blaster Blade can get over it if your opponent's Narukami and they're using Smashboxer Dragon. You can't use it against that. You know, a lot of decks have been given ways around it, but it's still too good not to run. 2 is the max copy you should probably run it at. Once again, because it does use your Counter Blast. You know, and there is a few counters to it now. So yeah, 2 is a good number. I find still a very, very good card, don't get me wrong, absolutely essential to the deck. So yeah, that was my Kouen deck profile, hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, I will get some games filmed soon of this. If you have any suggestions or requests, let me know in the comment, ask me any questions about this deck, why I run certain things. Try to explain as best I can in my video, hence why my deck profile videos tend to go on quite long, I'm afraid. So if you haven't clicked off already, thank you for staying to the end. Hopefully I explained why I made my choices. I do playtest quite a lot, and I love this build. I really do love this build. It was kind of me at the beginning throwing a temper tantrum against the meta, even though this deck is kind of meta, honestly. But in terms of like the stuff I didn't want to deal with, just I can't be bothered with a lot of the deck's rubbish. So this kind of counts counters Shadow Paladins quite well. It counts Gear Chronicle now because they have a lot of annoying rear guards that will call out other stuff, that grade 1 that goes into soul and they get the draw, building that hand up kind of stuff. I just don't want to deal with it. It's me throwing my toys out of the pram basically. It's like I don't want to deal with anything of yours, don't want to deal with your blasters, don't want to deal with your big field. Just get out of here. I want to do all my plays, I don't need to do your plays. So yeah, this was kind of the idea behind this deck. And I love this deck, I really do, fell in love with it. I did make out of it kind of not hate, but kind of just like anger with the meta, and I ended up just falling in love with it and how it plays and everything like that. And once again, it makes your opponent not your biggest fan. As I said, I got called a monster at Nationals for this build. So yeah, I like this build. I'm not going to say it's the best, I'm not going to say it's the most ideal, but it's the build I like, and it's the build I would run again tomorrow in a heartbeat, you know, if I had to. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. More videos coming soon. Do all that YouTube stuff please, the liking and subscribing if you have not already. If you enjoyed this, once again, leave suggestions and I'll try and accommodate them as much as I can. I'm not spending as much money on Vanguard or Buddy Fight as much anymore. I tend to just know what I want to build and I'll buy singles, hence why like I've not been doing any box openings or anything like that. But if I do buy any more boxes or anything like that, I will try and get them filmed for you guys, and talk about any other decks you guys kind of want me to. You know, I do have a bias against Kagero, Narukami, Gold Paladin kind of stuff, so I'm more informative about them, so that's what you'll see most of on this channel, but I hope that they are kind of the most useful videos you'll find on YouTube in terms of these specific decks. So yeah, I'll end the video there. I've been going on long enough. Hope you guys enjoyed. I've been Ben from VGBlaster, and I'll see you guys soon.